My mission is to help people build relationships that last. You see, relationships are too important to just leave to chance. There's some research by Harvard University, and they've tracked people's lives over 80 years. And what they found was the biggest ingredient, the biggest factor that determined someone's health, wealth, career success, happiness, was the quality of their relationships. I didn't start out intentionally wanting to solve relationship problems. I started out, my actual background when I did my psychology degree was in happiness. And I started helping people, like, how do you be happier? But over and over, what people wanted to talk about was their relationships. And I kept seeing the same problems, that everyone thought that they were the only person to have this problem, but it was the same problems over and over again. And so about 3 years ago, I set out to really solve these problems and set a pathway so that people could build a relationship that lasts from wherever they were. So now I'm going to show you this pathway. I want you to know that this isn't just something that I've pulled out of thin air. This is something that I've seen I've been working with people since 1993 as a coach, as a therapist, as a mediator, as a trainer. And these are the things that I've seen over and over again. I have a background in psychology, and this is based in the research. This is based in like the 40 years of the Gottman's research and other relationship researchers like Steve Duck and Sue Johnson and people like that. This is, if you look at any relationship, you can analyze and you can break down the different parts of it, particularly when a relationship ends. If you go deeper than, like, we were just incompatible or we just grew apart, you can see exactly like the vulnerabilities of a relationship. And so what I've done is I've created a relationship wall. And so what we've got here is the building blocks of a relationship. And so there's 3 real keys to making a relationship work. It's contracting. So this is about the structure of the relationship. This is about resolving differences and agreeing what you're going to do. It's about setting expectations. It's about setting in place agreements, boundaries for the everyday things that we do so that they run more smoothly. It's about the climate. And the climate it can be summed up really in what John Gottman says in The Attitude happy and successful couples have in their relationship. And that is basically, when there's a problem, so I think John Gottman says it as, baby, when you hurt, the world stops. And so basically it's about caring enough about your partner. It's about really wanting to create this positive bond. It's about being sensitive to what they need, understanding what they're going through, what their issues are, and then working as a team so that whenever any challenge comes along, it doesn't divide you, it doesn't become a wedge between you, but it becomes something that you deal with together. And what happens with those, when you approach it with that attitude, what happens is you become more of a team and you actually become more bonded through the more hardships and challenges that you face. And then the last one is connect. And it's about, you have to connect. Usually people have a dating relationship, and a dating relationship is they see each other for maybe a couple of hours a week, and it's the high point and they don't have any other distractions. So it's going to be a great experience. There's the novelty, there's the passion, the excitement of what might be. 5 years later, it's probably more of a domestic partnership. It's maybe you've got kids, maybe there's um, stresses with work, there's running the house, and people forget what brought them together. In order to maintain a relationship and keep it to last, you have to maintain that connection. You have to keep the passion alive. You have to keep the interest. You have to keep the connection. So that's the 3 C's that are at the core of making a relationship work. But you see that these rest on all these other factors. So the 3 C's are 20% of what it takes to make a relationship last. And so all kinds of relationship courses and whatever are actually only working on 20% of the issue, because the real issue is 40% of a relationship success is who you choose as your partner, and 40% is yourself and what you bring to a relationship, how well prepared you are for that relationship. And so these are the building blocks. So it's about, so before you start dating, you need to really have an idea of what kind of relationship is going to satisfy you. Because otherwise what happens is you meet someone because they're attractive for whatever reason, and you get into a relationship, it all goes well, and maybe then 5 years later you find yourself like, what am I doing? This relationship doesn't work for me. And it was, all the issues were set at the beginning. And so you have to know what you're looking for in a relationship in order that you can find the one who's going to be the partner that's going to make it work, and so that you can last. And so then it's about, you need to have dating skills, because you need to be able to attract attention. One of the problems I see a lot is people get into a relationship, they've never really mastered the art of dating. And so they get into a relationship with someone who's convenient, someone who's there, and maybe it's not the person that they really wanted to get into a relationship with. And so you have to know, because also in a relationship, what makes it a success is that you don't need the relationship, that you are equally willing to walk away from a relationship at any time. And you can only do that when you know that you can find someone else equally good or better. I've sat in groups with women who were in relationships with domestic violence and emotional abuse, and they would talk about how their lives were being made a misery by their partner. And they say, well, but I don't want to be on my own. And like, that's the only choice. There's the maths today is, there's never been so many single people, and there's never been so much access to single people. So whatever age you are, whatever stage of life, whatever you're looking for, there's people out there who are looking for the same. It's just about, can you reach them? And so the last part of the dating aspect is about filtering. Like I said, 40% of the problem, 40% of what makes a relationship is the person that you choose. And the person that you choose is the same person maybe 10 years later. Of course, people change a little, but the same basic characteristics. And there's everything there. The clues are all there that you can pick the relationship that works, the person that can make the relationship work with you. I've seen so many people, and they've got into narcissistic relationships, or they got involved in someone because the beginning was so good, because the dating, there's this whole kind of love bombing and this period where people get addicted to the high of someone, and they miss all the red flags, they miss all the signs that showed them what the relationship was going to turn out like. And so you need to be really careful who you choose, because choosing someone to get to commit into a relationship is a little bit like buying a house. It's not something that you rush into. It's not something that you just pick anyone. It's a big investment. And so it's key that you have those skills to be able to know who you're looking for, what the real criteria is, not whether someone's tall or whether they're good looking, but whether it's someone that's going to have the qualities and the characteristics that are going to make you feel satisfied 5 or 10 years later. So that top layer is dating skills. So now we're going to look at one of the biggest problems is people work from the fairy tale model. People work from a framework of relationships that doesn't really work. If you look at our statistics of marriage, where half of marriages end in divorce, that's not an individual problem. That's not down to individual area. That's a systemic problem. That's a problem with our understanding of how we do relationships, of what we should expect from relationships. So one of the the first pathway I'm going to show you is about changing the game of relationships so you play one that wins. Then it's about men and women have entirely different approaches to relationships, different understanding of relationships. And this is a generalization, of course, and it's not politically correct. But the fact is, we live in a patriarchy. We've lived in a patriarchy for thousands of years. And it doesn't matter if tomorrow everyone had equal opportunities. The fact is, it's layered in the way that we've been brought up, in the way that our culture is set. It's layered in the words that we use. And so there's so many deep threads that we need to understand the differences. We need to understand how men and women, what they want from relationships and how they view relationships. Typically, I see men treat women like men, women treat men like women. And it's because not understanding this difference. And it's understanding sex as well, understanding what sex means to people, and understanding how you prevent or how you resolve all those sex problems that come up in relationships. So the next stage of that is about, once you change the game, relationships don't become something that happens to you. They're not down to luck. There's something that you achieve. And then there's building blocks and there's pathways to achieve relationship success. And so right at the bottom, we've got your personal foundation. And you have to begin with a clean slate, because if you haven't got a clean slate and you're judging your partner by your ex, if you're all the time looking for a problem because it's happened before, if you're still reacting to things that you learned in childhood, then that's going to impact a relationship. You have to have self-worth. You can't feel someone else's love more than you are willing to accept. You can't. Your relationship with yourself is the template for all other relationships. If you don't have that, then it's going to affect the relationship, and eventually it's going to cause the relationship to collapse. So you need to have self-worth and be able to stand up for what you want and what you expect in a relationship. And then you have to be happy on your own. It doesn't mean that you have to be happy on your own because you're going to always stay on your own. But if you're, as humans, what we always do is seek happiness. And so when people are unhappy, they buy things. When people are unhappy, they go out and they try and change things by having a relationship, by going out and getting drunk. are always seeking happiness. And so if you're not happy in yourself, you're going to take it from the relationship, and that's going to drain the relationship. Sorry, it's going to drain the relationship. And so it's going to cause the relationship to collapse. So what I found was when one of these is missing, it compromises the whole structure of the relationship. And then because the relationship is structured, is compromised, that can go for a few years. But when something puts extra stress on a relationship, that extra pressure, if the relationship isn't supported, it's going to crumble. And so these are the building blocks. Now, in order to achieve something, and so we're looking at relationships as being an achievement. In order to achieve something, you've got to be able to measure it. You see, I see lots of people like with high power jobs and they're so successful in their careers and they're able to manage all these projects. And yet they treat their relationships completely differently. Relationship is an area of life that you have to master. It's an area that you have to be able to manage, and you can't manage it unless you know how to measure it. And so the real mark of a relationship is its quality. And we have to be careful here because lots of people get into toxic relationships, like people get into a relationship with narcissists, and it's amazing in the first 3 to 6 months. And that's because there's all this high, there's this lust, there's these chemicals, there's this excitement. And so everyone's feeling great, but when that wears off, then it becomes the person's like the narcissist or sociopath or whatever is trying to recreate that validation, that feeling. And so they'll get into controlling, manipulating, and abuse. But by that time, someone's hooked on the high and they think, oh, I've never had a relationship that is this great. And so they're addicted to that feeling. And so even if most of the time they're getting told that they're useless and they're worthless and they're feeling bad, it's just that one bit, that one hit is what creates an addiction. And so we can't judge a relationship by how great it is in the first 3 to 6 months. A relationship has to be judged over time. But it's more about the stability of the relationship than the ups and downs. Because any relationship that's got great ups is also going to have great downs. And so these building blocks are about putting in place a relationship that lasts, and a relationship that lasts is stable. So the way that you do that is by reaching different stages. And so at the bottom here, we can see that this is where a lot of people are. It's just relationships are just luck. Like, oh, you'll meet the one when you're not expecting it and just go about your business. And one day someone will walk in. And what that means is you're just waiting on chance. And chances are probably not going to work out. Relationships, there's this whole dynamic that creates it from being positive. And when we understand how to master it, then we're able to create relationships sort of almost on demand. So once the next stage is being happy on your own, it's being comfortable in yourself, accepting yourself. And then the next stage is understanding the awareness of relationship dynamics. And maybe you haven't yet built a successful relationship, but you're aware of how you would do it. The next level is dating skills, being able to find a quality partner and being able to weed through who are all the ones that are really attractive and they might make great flings, but they're probably not going to make a great life partner. And then the next stage is, how do you structure a relationship for success? How do you make it so that it brings out the best in both partners? And then the next stage is, how do you manage conflict and differences and challenges? How do you develop the relationships? And then the final stage is really over time, where you've managed to deepen the connection, where you've kept passion and interest alive, where your friends and your lovers. And so it's that kind of supportive relationship that's going to stand the test of time. So 20% of the building blocks come from relationship skills, 40% is being able to choose the right partner, and 40% of your success is having the right personal foundations. So going from unaware and not being able to make a relationship work or relying on luck, to knowing that you have the skills, knowing that you could at any point go out and find someone who would make a great partner and build a relationship that's going to last. This is about developing certain skills. And so at the bottom level is about just that unaware and just waiting for chance. And so the key here is about developing self-worth and finding happiness. It may be that you might have come out of a toxic relationship. It might be that you're getting over a breakup. So there's going to be some healing. There's going to be clearing some baggage, but that's about your personal foundations. The next one is about meeting people, and maybe you're getting into relationships and they're only lasting a short time, maybe 6 months or 2 years, and it's a series of these relationships. And this is about not really knowing how to relationship dynamics and how to make them work. And it's maybe you keep meeting the wrong people or being frustrated. And this is where people feel a lot of doubt. And they feel like, is it me? Is there something wrong with me? And so the key to success there is being able to change the game, and so that you can take control of your relationships. The next level is about dating, is about working through, you meet people, some work out, some don't, and some go longer than others. But it's about being able to go out dating and be able to find the right partner. So the next level is about, okay, so you can get into a relationship and it's a good partner. But now how do you make that work between you? Because even if you have that 40%, and you've got the partner and you've scored pretty well out of that, then there's still that bit of, if you're just going to create friction, if you're going to create conflict, and you're going to lose that connection, then the relationship's not going to last. So that's about achieving that. Now we're going to go, okay, so there's 12 steps to building a relationship, but what I've done is I've built the first 9, which is your personal foundation. So this is for single people to go from wherever they are, whether they're getting over a breakup or they've been single for a while, to being able to find the one that you want to commit to and build that relationship with. So it begins with clearing out the baggage. You can't take that baggage from a past relationship into your new relationship. You need to give the relationship a clean slate. So the next level is about building self-worth, so that you have a great relationship with yourself, so that you are able to set the standards and the boundaries for what you expect in a relationship, and you're able to be a full participant in it. You're not trying to please people and trying to make a relationship work rather than seeing if it works. The next one is about you've got to be happy alone, because then you're going to bring your happiness into the relationship. Whereas if you're not happy, and a lot of people get into relationships in order to, they think it's going to make them happy. But what's going to happen is you're going to drain from the relationship, you're going to drain from the other person, and ultimately it's going to collapse. Okay, so the next level is about the relationship foundations. This is about how you change the game of relationships. Now, I call my company Make Relationships Simple, because this is what you need to do. You need to go from like the fog of confusion where you don't know what's happening, you don't know what your other what your partner feels, you don't know what their intentions are, you don't know why they do what they do, and so you need to move from being confused to being clear. And so this is by changing the game, and it's by changing the game that you make relationships simple. So once you've changed the game, you can take control, and so then your relationship satisfaction is something you can achieve. You can't necessarily control a relationship, but you control whether you stay in the relationship, you control who you get into the relationship with, and you control how you feel in that relationship. So relationships then become something that you achieve rather than something that just happens from chance. So the next key is about sex and gender differences. You need to know the differences, the different realities that people work from, and why that's going to cause conflict, and how you navigate that. So then when we get into successful dating, it's about building your vision. It's about being able to attract attention, being able to set the right profile so that you're able to get attention of the right kind of people. And then it's about filtering from in dating sites. You've got thousands of people. You go from lots of douchebags to sending you dick pics and asking you to meet them at 3 a.m. because they're passing through your town or whatever else, to ultimately the one that you can have a deep connection with. And from that stage, then, if you go through these and you've put in the personal foundation, you're going to show up as your best self. If you've done the dating right and you've filtered, you're going to choose someone that has the characteristics that mean that you can make a relationship that lasts. Someone that you can also satisfy their needs in a relationship. And so from then on, you've got 80% of the relationship cracked. And when the reason that we don't have communication, the reason that we lose connection, a lot of it is down to our emotional foundations. Communication isn't about saying the words. Communication is about being brave enough to be vulnerable enough to tell someone how you feel. And so this is about 80% of the success of a relationship, of your future relationships. So I just want to talk a little bit about the core philosophy of making relationships simple. And you do that by changing the game of relationships. You see, culturally, we've been given a lie of relationships. We've been told that relationships are like the fairy tale model, and that is the prince meets princess, and they fall in love. The prince slays the dragon. They fall in love, and they love, and they're happy ever after. And so, this is at the core of people's frustrations and lack of success in relationships. This is why the divorce rate is like 50%. It's because people don't understand that, like, nobody ever teaches you relationships. And so what we have been given, when you understand that how we think, all of our neural connections are 70% connected, fully connected at the age of 7. And the age of 7, we were told over and over again that this is how a relationship worked, that once the prince slays the dragon and the princess is beautiful enough, then they live happily ever after. But the reality is that's not true. So let's look at the lessons of the fairy tale model. And that is that there's one out there for everyone, but only one. And when you meet your one, you'll fall in love if you're good enough, because the pathway is, if the princess is sweet and beautiful enough, and if the prince is gallant and dashing enough, then they're going to fall in love. And if the love is true, you'll live happily ever after. So this means that when there's a problem, that people look and they say, well, maybe he wasn't my one. When someone feels that someone doesn't love them in the same way 10 years later as they did, they say, oh, well, they mustn't be the one. And so they change partners, but they end up getting the same result. And so the fourth lesson is that fate is the pathway to happy ever after. And so love becomes a lottery. And you see this, if you look on dating sites, people are talking about, I want my Prince Charming, I want my one, I want the fairy tale dream. And people consciously, like, if they really think about it, they know that life doesn't really work like a fairy tale. But we don't work from our highest conscious level. Most of the time we're busy, we're just reacting, we've got other things on our mind. And so what we do is we just react. And when people react in relationships, they're mostly reacting to the fairy tale model. And so what this does is this sets up for resentments and bitterness, which is then what corrodes the connection, and eventually the relationship collapses. So the alternative framework, at the core of it, is the 4 relationship truths. And the 4 relationship truths are: relationships are a struggle. The cause of our struggle is our narrative, and we can end the struggle if we let go of our narrative. And so we overcome the struggle when we build on truth. And so then there's a pathway of the 8 foundational relationship principles and the 8 relationship practices. But the core difference to this is that when people get, so often a couple will meet someone a little bit older who's been married at their wedding, at their wedding reception, and they'll say, wish you the best, and you've got to work it, and they go, oh, and the couple are so in love, so happy that they don't think it can ever be any different, and they're like, yeah, but we're different, we're really suited together. The reality is that every relationship is going to be a struggle. As Dan Weil says, when you marry someone, you marry a set of problems. If you married someone else, you wouldn't have those problems, but you'd have an entirely different set of problems. So we have to go in knowing that there's going to be differences, because no 2 people have the same vision, no 2 people are similar. It's just a case of which problems are you able to live with. And so the cause of struggle is our narrative. And so the whole fairy tale is a narrative, and it's a narrative that we have about relationships, which means that when the reality doesn't match up, we're unhappy, we're disappointed in the relationship, and then we feel resentful at our partner. So every relationship problem can be resolved when you get past the narrative and you boil it down to the actual elements. And so if we're willing to let go of our narrative, we can end the struggle. And so what this does is this gives us a pathway for how we solve problems, and it gives us a way, it gives us expectations that are realistic, and it gives us a solution to be able to create a relationship that's simpler. And so, okay, let's talk about how you build a relationship. And I believe that you build it from the foundations up. And so I've already talked about like personal foundations, but this is how you build a relationship. You build your emotional stability first. Then you have a vision of what the relationship that you want. Then you start attracting people and filtering down to the one that you're going to commit to. And then it's about developing the romance, developing the relationship, and then you get the blissful state and the happy ever after. But a lot of people go through these steps, but what they don't do is they don't do them all at once, because you build emotional stability and then you're able to move on to envisioning the relationship. But you still have to, that's a dynamic thing, emotions, and you always have to have that emotional stability. Your vision is going to change as you evolve. Your vision of the relationship is going to change. The dating skills, people have a dating relationship and they have a domestic relationship. You can't go from having this dating relationship, the high of the dating relationship where it's all fun and you're having fun together and you're seeing the best of each other, to be in a domestic relationship that's full of drudgery and you're just having to work. You still have to keep it alive with the dating relationship. Oops, sorry. And so you always need to keep these. You always need to keep developing the relationship as each person evolves. Okay, so now you've got two choices. I've shown you the exact pathway, and you can go it alone. You can take what I've given you here. You can read lots of books. You can watch YouTube videos and just find out from trial and error. Or we have a pathway that, this isn't just a pathway that I just created out of thin air. This is a pathway that thousands of people have walked. This is the way that lasting relationships have been built. And I've come across I've worked with people since 1993, and I've come across pretty much every relationship problem and solution. I've seen what's worked, what doesn't work. So relationships are difficult. Relationships are difficult because often we get stuck in our own head. We need ideas from other people. We need support. We need to be able to talk things over with other people and to get different ideas from people. And it may be that you have friends and family that play that role. For a lot of people, though, sometimes they can't talk about it because people have a judgment. People maybe have told them, don't go with this, don't do this, and it's not the right answer for the person. And because people who love us, they want the best for us, and they have their own vision for how we're going to be. So you need support, and if you don't have that from your own, then it may be that the pathway is better for you. Now, which choice is right for you basically depends on what the relationship is worth. So how valuable that is to you. So there's two factors, whether you go it alone or whether you work with us. There's two factors that are going to determine your success. And those factors are, first of all, it's about how willing you are to be exposed to the truth. So one of the core principles I have in relationships is build on truth. And the reason for that is anything that's not built on truth, sooner or later is found out and collapses. Anything that's built on truth, you never have to worry about being found out. You never have to worry about reality jarring with it. And so when I'm talking about truth, I'm not talking about your truth, my truth, anyone's truth. I'm talking about what actually works, because we have stories about what works, and then we have the truth of the reality of what life shows us. So it's about our problems in relationships come from the narrative, and it's about how do you get past your own narrative and boil it back down to the truth. And when truth is revealed to you, how willing are you to accept that? Because a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people that have been stuck, and they've been like, oh, my ex-boyfriend was the love of my life. How will I ever feel love again? Well, are you sure it's the love of your life? Because your life isn't over. Maybe you'll meet someone else. And no. If I thought that, then it would devalue the relationship that we had. And so someone in that case has got themselves stuck in that narrative. Another narrative people have is there's no good men out there. There's no dating sites are full of players. Women are only after money. All of these are narratives because they're not actually true. What, all women are just after money? All men are players? We have to boil it back to what is exactly true. And your willingness to do that is going to determine how quickly you get success. The second factor is commitment. And commitment, unless you're committed, you're never going to achieve anything. You need to put in the time. In order to be different in relationships, and in order to have different relationships, you need to be different. In order to be different, you need to change something. And so it's your willingness to be exposed to the truth and the commitment to make a change. And so commitments in terms of effort, in terms of time, and in terms of money, because money is kind of a shortcut. Like, for example, if you work with us, the pathway is going to be much quicker and much more certain of success. But even if you don't work with us, you still there may be courses that you need, there may be books that you need, but you need something outside of yourself, and your willingness to commit and invest in that is going to determine your success. So following on from that, I want to talk about what is the value of a relationship to you, because this is what determines how much effort, time, money that you should commit to it. And I remember a girlfriend from a long time ago, and she was like, I'd never pay to be on a dating site. And at the time, I didn't really pay when I was on dating sites. But when I look at it now, and you think about it, and sometimes people say, oh, do I need a relationship course? Do I need a coach? Or I wouldn't pay that much money. But when you look at it, right, emotionally, so let's just deal with the money one, because financially, when you look at it, it's actually, when you look at what a relationship's worth to you, any cost is kind of pales into comparison. Now, okay, so a relationship that works obviously is going to be worth a certain financial amount. People will spend, like on average in the UK, people spend £32,000 on a wedding. Well, they spend that much on flowers, on food, on a party, and yet how much do they spend on preparing for the relationship? So it's like you have this great wedding day, and then the relationship, the 20, the 30 years after that, there's almost no thought gone into. People spend, on average, just divorce costs is £13,000. And that's not like the living costs of paying for two houses and running costs and so on. So when you look in those terms, like financially, almost anything that you spend on making a relationship work is going to be a worthwhile investment. And so sometimes people say, well, I'm single, and I don't have that much money. But actually, if you look at it, if you're in a relationship, say 18 months, and then someone moves in with you and that relationship works out, well, you've just halved your living costs. And so what's the value of that? So socially, what's the value of a relationship to you? Like, one of the big things that people feel socially is they kind of, a lot of time, sometimes some people have better social lives when they're single than when they're in a couple. But some people, it's like they get excluded because they're single, and sometimes people are jealous, or sometimes, or they lose friends in a relationship. And so sometimes the whole social aspect is something that people find difficult about being single. Right, emotionally, we just biologically have this craving to be in a relationship. We need intimacy. We need to feel close to someone. We're social animals, that we do pair bond, and so we need to feel like there's someone there that supports us. There's someone there that validates us, that makes us feel better about ourselves. Someone there when we have a tough time. Someone that cares. And so, what's that worth emotionally? And just love. Love is one of the core three things, that achievements that we have to have, and it's so much entwined with our sense of self-worth. Like, if nobody loves us, we feel worthless. If someone loves us, we feel worthy. We feel content. We feel satisfied. And so what I'm really arguing here for is for you to recognize what the value of a relationship is, so that you put that commitment in, so that whatever time, whatever money, whatever effort it demands for you to make a relationship succeed is going to be worthwhile. And the payback is going to be almost more, is going to be more significant than anything else that you can spend your time, your money, or your attention on. Okay, so like I said, if we have the pathway, if you are interested in finding out, get in touch. So here's who we work with. We work with people who are ready for a relationship. By ready for a relationship, I mean there's not some huge problem that would stop them from getting into a relationship. From people who are open to the truth, because what I do is basically cut into the truth and getting through narrative, to be able to find what your barriers are, and people who are committed. I can give you I can give you as much information as you need to make a relationship success. I can do as much for you, give you as many possible tools, but the relationship ultimately is yours, and it's your responsibility, and it's only going to work if you're committed to it. So that's who we work with. We don't work with people who have a barrier to starting a relationship, people who are attached to the narrative, and we can't break through, or people who are half-hearted. If you're not ready to commit, our process is about a quick transformation, about changing you from maybe someone who doesn't have much luck in relationships and is relying on luck, to someone who can achieve it, and they know that they can achieve it anytime they want to. So if you're interested, book a call. There's a link down below. And if you are going to go it alone, then let me know how this works out for you. Use these steps, use this pathway, and share with me how it worked for you.